Hello everyone, I'm Jim Gilbert here with another episode of Talking with Teachers on your Barnstable Educational Television Station, B2B TV. I am here today with Pam Peek, a math teacher here at Barnstable High School. Thanks for being here, Pam.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure.
Let's start with, what are you teaching this year? How many blocks, what grade levels?
Okay, I'm teaching 5 classes this year.
Okay.
I have 3 pre-algebra 8th grade classes and 2 sophomore, junior, maybe an occasional freshman in a geometry class.
Okay, and how's it going?
I'm having a great time. I'm having a great time. And I'm confident that students are starting to learn some math again. A reminder, refresher of what they have already learned, but also even some new things already.
How much backwards have you had to go due to last year's remote learning?
I don't even feel like backwards is a word that we have. We pick up where we are. Students have so much up here, and I just help pull it out.
Right.
And I always say to students, if you don't know something, go back to what you do know and work forward, and you can always get to where you need to go with a little bit more time.
Because everybody in the classroom is in a different place anyway, right?
Sure, for the
So
most
you
part.
pick up where,
Yep.
I mean, that's what they
Yep.
mean by meet the students where they are.
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
Great, thank you for that answer. Let's get into a little bit about you. Where did you go to high school?
I went to school, a small school up in New Hampshire, Guilford, New Hampshire.
I've heard of it.
And the reason I went there, it's right near Laconia, which is part of the Lakes region. And my dad was an educator my whole life. And when we moved, he started teaching at Guilford, then he moved our family to Guilford, and we all went to that school. So I actually went there as a sophomore. So I only went to Guilford my sophomore, junior, senior year.
And was your dad a teacher there while you were there?
He was, yeah.
And
I never had him.
What did he teach?
He was a science and math teacher.
Okay.
And he always said he loved teaching middle school math. And I see why. I see why.
Why is that? What's the...
It was a combination of, at least when he was teaching, the middle school was always team taught.
Okay.
And the middle school age, the students are still full of life. Maybe a little less drama, a little bit. But I love teaching high school.
Sure.
That's why I'm here. And I've only been teaching 8th grade. This is now my 2nd year. But it's a great age. High school is great in general. I enjoyed my high school years, and I really enjoyed teaching this age group.
Did you already know that you wanted to be a teacher because of your father's influence when you were in high school, or did that happen in college? Where did that start to develop for you?
That's a great question. And I may have known it in my gut, but I didn't know it in my heart and my head yet, even though both my dad and my college advisor said I would be a great teacher. But circumstances were such that I didn't start teaching right out of college. Even though I had a math degree, I wasn't qualified, wasn't taking any education credits per se.
Right.
I actually started as an actuarial science student in the insurance industry.
Okay.
And if you know anything about actuarial science, it's math, math, math.
Right.
So from a math major, it sounded awesome. It wasn't for me. After a few years, I knew it wasn't for me. I let that go. Had a few other things, switched to human resources.
Okay.
Then I was able to be home with my sons for a few years. And then I decided it's time to start teaching and coaching is what I really felt called to do.
That's one of the purposes, one of the goals of this program is to help illuminate the community a little bit about the journey of our educators. That it's not always straight to college, straight to master's degree, and you're in the classroom at the age of 23.
Right.
You know, how does your personal experience in those other industries influence your classroom today, you think?
Well, I certainly, my business world experience, my experience in my family as a parent, and I helped raise 3 sons, and now I'm part of a family of 7 adult children and 9 grandchildren. Also tucked in there is 2 years of driving a school bus, which if you can manage a school bus with ages from kindergarten to high school,
Sure.
I'm like, maybe I can manage a high school classroom. Real world experience always help, and certainly being a little bit more mature in age before I got into a classroom also helped me, even though that first year is still a very, very challenging adjustment. But with the supports that I had, both outside of school and within school, I've felt that I've been able to grow as a teacher each year. And I know I'm called to be a teacher, and I'm so grateful for those that have been encouraging me and supporting me all these years to get me to where I am now. And I joke with my students, because they will hear me say, I'm the best math teacher, pre-algebra math teacher you're going to have this year. So, hey, yes, I'm their only one.
Right.
But with that said, I'm going to try to be the best math teacher.
And I'm sure they appreciate that effort on your end. You know, kids are so perceptive and so able to pick up on the effort that people like yourself are making in the classroom to help them succeed.
Yeah.
Tell me just a little bit about, you know, getting professionally certified and becoming ready to teach and coming here to Barnstable.
Sure. While I was driving a school bus, I went through a personal crisis in my life, and I needed to find work, and so driving a school bus was a good fit at that time. And during that time, for about 2 years, I realized I think I'm ready to dive into teaching, because I did hear that a lot. You'd be a great teacher. You'd be a great teacher. And I was always drawn to coaching and teaching, even if it was just if I was coaching my son's teams, or teaching my sons in our home.
Right.
So I decided to, with a bachelor's degree in math, you can get into a classroom in Massachusetts. So I pursued that,
Yep.
and then you have to pass the teacher's test,
Yep.
the Massachusetts Educational MTELS.
Yeah,
MTELS.
yeah.
Yep. You have to pass the math one and the literacy and comprehension,
Sure,
or something.
I know
like that.
a little bit about it.
Yep. And I fortunately passed both the first time.
Yeah.
That got me into a math classroom, and I started long-term subbing in a Worcester high school, because
Okay.
we lived out in Western Massachusetts. That was great, and then through some other personal changes in my life at the time, I needed to move to Cape Cod.
Yeah.
And when I moved to Cape Cod, I was already certified as a teacher with I think it's called a preliminary license.
Yep.
And I was first hired at the Tech High School in Harwich as a part-time math and phys ed teacher, which was very interesting. But the math was teaching 8th graders.
Okay.
It's like, awesome. And that was great, but I did need full-time work. So Barnstable had some openings. And on a personal note, at that time, my 2 oldest sons were going to Barnstable. And one was a freshman and one was a junior. And I did feel the need to ask them, would they be okay if I taught in their high school?
Sure.
Would you be okay with that? And they were, sure, Mom, that'd be great. So I applied, and I got hired, and I want to say the rest is history. However,
It's math.
part of the history is that first year was very challenging.
Sure.
But it also was a year when our district was going through some massive cuts, like $5 million of cuts throughout the district and the state and whatnot. So I got laid off after my first year. Very common for
Sure.
first-year teachers for whatever reason. I was kind of grateful for the layoff because I could regroup, because it was a really challenging year. And I continued to sub all over the Cape. And then another opening opened up here in the high school in the alternative learning program. And I was encouraged to apply for that position and was hired for that position.
What was the alternative learning program like at the time?
Well, it's a smaller group of high school students, and the cool part about alternative learning here was it was like what my dad said about middle school teaching. It's team taught, except it was team taught at the high school level. A small group of teachers with a smaller group of students, kind of a more family environment. A lot of what you've heard the expression looping in education,
Sure.
where you have the same teacher maybe 2 years in a row.
Yep.
The alternative program was like that. You would have a math teacher for 3 years in a row, or 2 or 3 years in a row sometimes, maybe even 4. So it really, you develop the relationships that can help students be more successful in school.
You mentioned coaching, and before we get to sports, do you have thoughts, opinions, nothing that I'm going to hold your feet to the fire about, but with your experience with alternative learning, with your experience with business outside of education, and now in a classroom in a more traditional sense, so to speak, and let's throw the hybrid digital learning in there as well. Do you have thoughts on where education is going, where it should go? Like, how do we incorporate let's throw the social emotional stuff in there as well, like, how do all these components come together to really benefit the young people who are dealing with so much these days?
Right. That's a massive question.
I know.
It's a massive question.
Do your
And
best.
I'm going to go back to one of my basic premises as a teacher. I love my students. I love all my students, day one, even though I haven't even met them. And I tell them that in my silly little pencils. When they read it, it says, "Mrs. Peek loves me," because that is the premise. I want them to know that I'm serious about caring about them. And my biggest goal is to care enough about them to help them grow in their math and grow as a human being as well, as they help me. I'm still growing, both in my math skills and in my humanness.
Right.
And technology, however we're trying to learn, however we're trying to communicate about our learning, specifically about math, I'm trying to grow students' skills and their confidence in their skills at the same time. And if people feel loved and cared about, I think it's a little bit easier for that to happen.
I appreciate that perspective. I think that's a wonderful component to bring to the classroom. These are young people after all, even physiologically, their brains are still developing, their emotions are still developing. Yeah. So if the more people that can express, I care about you, I want you to succeed, I think the easier it is for them to hear it and believe it and become successful young people. So thank you for that answer. So coaching. I'm assuming, because I've seen you out on the tennis courts here at Barnstable High School, that you were a tennis coach.
I was a tennis coach for just a couple of seasons before I moved to the Cape out at Quabbin Regional High School. Tremendous experience. I yearn to coach here sometime, but it's just not possible with my family circumstances. And I'm actually playing on a tennis team myself at one of the local clubs, and it feels so good to be back playing the game that I love, competing a little bit. It ties everything together for me.
Right.
I never realized how much stress I can get out on a tennis court, whacking those balls. But I also coached soccer when my sons were young, and I played volleyball, basketball, and tennis in school.
I assume you bring that same passion and caring to coaching and teaching those lessons.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here, Pam. Lovely conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Best of luck the rest of the school year.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You've been watching Talking with Teachers. Pam Peek, Barnstable High School math teacher. We'll see you again real soon. Thanks for watching.